Hello, and welcome to ESG Talk. We're so glad that you tuned in for this episode of The Chat. Today, we're going to talk through how to deal with ESG challengers. If your inbox or text are anything like mine, you've probably been receiving a lot of hot takes on ESG pushback or backlash. Everything from politicians and their views on pension funds around the world or located in the US in the different states, potentially even looking at how companies are in or out of different ESG funds. I always want to put everything into context and really simplify it for all of us. Number one, it's important to remember context is king. So when we look at this time of year, this is the time after annual general meetings like we talked about with Lambert earlier in the season. We have to think about the fact that proxy votes have been through. Current regulation is coming into play. It is a natural time for us to challenge and debate how environment, social, and governance can truly benefit society and companies. But let's take these two challengers from the political side of pension funds and the pushback of companies in and out of different ESG funds. It really comes down to this basic principle. With any business decision, you have risk, you have opportunity, and you have cost. Environment, social, and governance isn't any different, particularly when you look into the investment community and the choices of investors. Let's take the pension fund topic, which seems to be so hot right now. Pension funds are looking at the long-term growth that they can sustain and the fiduciary responsibilities of those that they serve. So it's really important that they achieve the returns that they need to do that. When you look at ESG, there is environment, social, and governance risk screening. You may choose to look at, is that company that you're invested in prepared for an energy transition? Or in the S category, oftentimes everyone's labeling this as like overly woke metrics from the left. It's really not. There's a lot in the S category, the social category, that a company like myself and the one that I work for are being evaluated on, including our supply chain code of conduct, making sure that we treat our employees well, and we have a training and development program. Yes, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts are a part of that component, but it's not the sole component. So as a pension fund, you have the choice. Are you going to use ESG risk screenings or considerations as you evaluate your portfolio? Well, that's a consumer choice, or in some ways it might be mandated by the regulation of the state or country that you're in. But then that moves into something really interesting, where what we see in Europe is there's this question around, are people greenwashing, or is the activity truly preparing companies with trusted data that an investor can know that they are prepared for the risk and the opportunity ahead? Worthy challenge, worthy to discuss, and worthy for companies to work together to make sure that data is credible and that we can make sure that it is audited and ready with the same financial vigor that we've had for the last 100 years on financial data. The other part is, do you proactively invest in some forms of environment, social, governance funds in order to achieve growth in your pension fund? Some pensions may choose to proactively invest in ESG funds because it would have a stronger return for their portfolio. Years ago, I can think of green real estate or other sleeves of business that would have that kind of return with a responsible social impact. Again, that is a proactive choice of the fiduciary responsibility of that pension fund to choose to do that or not. And finally, fees, and we can talk about the fees of environment, social governance funds and considering that overall as the cost management. But really, pensions are about, if you take away all the politics, looking at responsibly the risk, the opportunity, and the cost. Now let's dive into the interesting facet when it comes to ESG investing and ESG investment funds. I wrote a really great piece around Elon Musk and the response of pushback, and I would agree pushback is good. It's good to challenge and talk with your investors about what is it that they care about and why or why not a company is in those funds. If you really care about the investment community and being environmental social governance funds, do the hard work to evaluate the risk, the opportunities, and the cost. For example, can you examine the investor funds that you're in? And what are the environment, social, and governance screenings that they use in order to determine their portfolio? What is the blend of disclosure and information that they're looking for in order to consider you as a part of their funds? If you haven't unpacked that part of your investor growth, then you decide that you're going to take the risk that you might not get into a fund. In fact, you might be rated a little bit lower. I'm not saying the rating agencies are perfect. I think there's plenty of opportunity for improvement, and we can all work together to build that improvement. I am saying you choose that risk. I also think those companies that have done the hard work have started to see increases in investor opportunities because they've really aligned to what that stakeholder is interested in knowing about their company in order to make those ESG considerations in the fund development. And that is where they're reaping the opportunity. But those companies have to determine the cost, the human capital cost, as well as the financial cost in order to prepare for those moments and that engagement with the investor or so. So I look at all of those pieces and I really break it down to this simple fact. Every company, every business, in every decision, you make trade-offs. So when it comes to environment, social, and governance, whether you're sitting and looking at the fiduciary responsibility of your pension fund or choosing what investors you want to listen to for investor growth or consideration, you have to determine and consider what are the business risks, what are the business opportunities, and what are the business costs, both financial, human, and otherwise. If you make it that simple and stick to your core strategy and the growth opportunities that ESG can bring to you, and the business value drivers, you'll be on the right track. So forget about all the hype, turn off all the noise, and stay focused on adding value to business and society.